Hello, book lovers. I'm Peg, and welcome to my channel. Well, I think the title of this video says it all. I'm here to admit I am a book prize addict, and have been for many years, but it's getting worse because there's more book prizes. Anyway, so I thought I'd talk about this problem a little bit. For many years now, there's been two main prizes here that we can get into here in the U.S., and I've read both of them. Now, I'll say first of all, when I say I like to read everything on the book prize list, I'm not gullible enough to think that they are really the best books of that country or that whatever the prize is for. But what they do have always given me is books I hadn't heard of, that I have a chance to read, and the best part is being able to discuss them. That while they're up for a prize, they're much discussed. Now, up until BookTube, most of the discussion was done in written fashion online, and for years I've taken part in several written forums. In fact, I was going to tell you before I'm going to talk a little bit about the different book prizes first and the history of them. For many years, there were only two main prizes. There was the one in the U.S. called the National Book Award, which I have been talking about the last few videos, and I'll be talking about a little bit more today. And then there was the Mann Booker Prize for Fiction, which was for British fiction and the Commonwealth, and did not include U.S. So it was really fun and different to read the two. They both came out in autumn, and it was really seemed fun to read them both because they were so different. There was the American prize and the British prize, and most of us, you know, read both of them, and we were sure to find some that way that we hadn't heard of. But just in the last, I think, couple years, with the globalization process, or for some other unknown reason, the Mann Booker has opened up its entries to anything written in English, any novel, pretty much, I think, which also includes the U.S. Now, for several years, actually, the U.S. entry has won, and the problem, I think, mostly from Americans, is that we'd rather not be well, I won't say that for the authors, but for many of us readers and critics, we would rather not be included in the Mann Booker, because it was just nice to get all these British books, a list of it, and you're able to get them once they get on the list, and may not have heard of them, and it enabled us to find a lot more books. Now it seems like at least half of the list is American. So, okay, it is what it is. Anyway, prior to BookTube, which I'm loving for the discussion, I so much value now being able to talk about it rather than write about it. There was a forum that still exists that I followed, that many of the other book prize junkies wrote in, and it was called the Mookse and the Gripes forum, and by a guy named Trevor, who really manages it very well and is organized. Now, up until the last few years, it had been on some other kind of web forum group. I forgot. They all seem to have disappeared now with Goodreads, because he has transferred that forum over to Goodreads. I think maybe not as many people know about it now because he doesn't have a lot, but it is tremendous. I've put it down at the bottom. I couldn't link it, but I've put his name down at the bottom. If you're all interested in reading about any of the book prizes that are coming up, go to that forum in Goodreads, and he has broken it down nicely. Once the book prizes are announced, he breaks it down into each book, a section for each book. So if you want to talk about a certain book with other people, you go to that book, and it's just fantastic, and very knowledgeable readers comment there. Anyway, so I'll be checking into that. I just want to say also, part of the addiction problem has been that now there's a plethora of book prizes all of a sudden, or maybe I'm just become more aware of them, which I love, but, you know, plays into my addiction. Actually, there's, besides the two I just talked about, I'm going to talk about a little bit more, there are 4 others that are going to be going on this autumn, and let me just give you a little bit of background on those. The next one that's coming up is called the Goldsmiths Prize. It's a British prize. It actually deals with experimental fiction, which people tend to either love or hate. And it's not going to be awarded till November. The list on it did just come out, and as soon as I finish up with this prize, I'll be starting on that. I should also say that Eric Carl Anderson, who has the blog, very famous booktuber, actually American living in England, has already put a video forward on his views of the Goldsmiths. So I know he'll be reading them, and I'm really looking forward to what he has to say. I've followed him many years. He did have a blog until BookTube arrived, and he's just fantastic. Okay, another one that's coming up is the DSC South Asian Prize, which actually I've talked about before. I've talked about a few that were on that list. It, again, is not going to be awarded till November, and I'll be talking more about that. It's administered in India, and it includes most either English, written in English, or translations into English of anything dealing with Asian people or writers or just Asia in general. And I really enjoy reading about that, as I've mentioned before, and I'll be back to talk about that. The next one that has been, the shortlist has just been announced, is the Scotia Bank Giller Prize for Canada, the best literature in Canada, or the best novel, one of the prizes. The shortlist was just announced. I'll be talking about that too. I had to order several of the books from Canada, which almost seems harder than ordering from the UK, but anyway, so they're on their way, and I'm going to enjoy talking about that. And the last, now all these, the prizes are going to be awarded like in 1 week in November. Very exciting week for some of us, but so anyway, there's a lot of reading time, or so it seems now. The last prize I want to note is the Costa Prize, again an English prize, and it has both two different fiction awards, both Best Novel and Best Debut Novel. And the famous Simon Savage from Savage Reads, who I've also followed for many years when he just had a blog, and now he has a wonderful YouTube channel and podcasts and everything. Anyway, he's going to be one of the judges on the debut novel. And he has talked for months about the secret books he's reading and hasn't been able to tell us anything about it, but he says there's some good ones on there, so it'll be really interesting to follow that and get his inside viewpoint. Okay, so that does it. I really enjoy talking about it. I appreciate the comments I've gotten from the book prizes I've talked about, and I encourage you all to read them and put in your 2 cents about them. So I'm going to just briefly go over the news on the book prizes that have been awarded or announced this week or coming up. First of all, the National Book Award chose its shortlist, 5 novels, the other day before yesterday, and they were announcing it just as I was making the video announcing my picks, which I knew might happen. So anyway, I didn't do too bad. 3 of my picks for the list out of the 5 made their list, and the other 2 were maybes, and certainly ones I'm going to read. Let me just go over them quickly, and I encourage you all to read it and get in on this, because it's not going to be awarded until November 15th. So you have lots of time to read these and talk about them. And I'm welcome any discussion you want to write on my channel about what you think of any of these. It's funny, they only gave us a short while to read the 10-page long list before they announced the short list. And now for the short list, five books, they're giving us like a month and a half. But okay, whatever. Anyway, so let me just go through those. The first three were ones that I also chose to be on the short list. The first one is Pachinko, dealing with a Korean immigrants in Japan, a many-year saga, and I've read some of it, and I can see it gives some very good history. I really love getting my history through novels, and so I do plan to finish this. Up the next one, Dark at the Crossing, deals with an Arab-American man who is wants to be in the Syrian civil war and is trying to cross over the boundary or between Turkey and Syria, which involves some dangerous escapades. And I think this one's very well written also. The other one that was on my list is Sing Unburied Sing by Jess Walters, which deals with a black family in Mississippi. And if for no other reason, you should read that to read the 100-page road trip from hell. It is just so well done. Okay, the two that I hadn't picked, but I did give them strong maybes. The first one is Her Body and Other Parties, and this was just published on Tuesday, but it's a book of short stories, and it's, from what I've read, it's getting a lot of good reviews. This author has written science fiction in the past, but these short stories seem to be an interesting combination of psychological realism and feminism, and with a bit of speculative fiction thrown in. So I'm looking forward to reading this, and I think this will probably be getting a lot of discussion on BookTube and other venues. Okay, and the last one on that 5 book list is The Leavers by Lisa Ko, that involves a family of Chinese undocumented immigrants living in New York City, and the mother of the boy who is told through his eyes. She goes off to work one day and never returns, kind of disappears, and shows the rest of his life searching for her and how his life turns out. And yeah, I don't want to give any spoilers away on that. It's very interesting to read. Okay, so those are the 5 that are going to be up for the National Book Award on November 15th. I'll be rereading some of them and be back to announce what I think should win. Okay, my next big reading assignment is to read the books that are on the shortlist for the Mann Booker Prize. Now, there's been a lot of talk about those, and I've tried not to really read any other reviews because I just want to read my own, get my own opinion first, and I haven't finished them all. So let me just quickly go over those. Now, this is going to be awarded on October 17th, so I need to get going on these. Okay, there's 6 on the short list for this, and let me start with what seems to be favored and least favored. One of the most favored that people have picked to win. Actually, they have betting in England that they set up I don't know how bookies work, but they set up odds and people can legally bet on book prices. Okay, this one by called Autumn by Ali Smith is has been termed the first Brexit novel that deals with that situation, and I think deals with a younger woman who makes friends with an older man in a rest home and their history. And I understand, rather than being plot-driven or character-driven, this is more idea-driven, which will be interesting to read. Okay, that's probably listed first with the bookies. The one that nobody seems to like very much is called Exit West by Hamid. I think also deals with an immigrant situation and brings in a little fantasy or science fiction where they are able to get to place. And as I said, many of the reviewers I really trust have severely critiqued this, but I feel like I really want and need to read it myself to see what I think. So I'll be reading that. Let's see. Oh, yeah, let me do this one first. Elmet by Fiona Mosley is a debut novel, which is kind of somewhat unusual to have be in the shortlisted for the Mann Booker, but it also has been getting a lot of accolades. And I understand the author was in the hospital giving birth when this was announced, so she's busy right now, I'm sure. Okay, anyway, this one, for a long time, only the Audible version was available in the U.S., and I did purchase that and I tried to listen to it, but I don't do real well with complex books listening to audio only. Anyway, it wasn't proving real successful, but I did just get the book, and I found the best approach for me is to read the book while listening to the audio, and I really appreciate listening to the English accent of the, I suppose it's local to the place this is actually at, and it makes it seem, I don't know, very realistic to be listening to the way people talk there as I read about it. So I have quite a bit left to go on this one, and I'm really liking it so far. I'm looking forward to it. There is one other debut novel up for this award called A History of Wolves by a person called last name Fridlund, and I have read that. I took it back to the library, so I'll have to recheck it out because I definitely want to read it again. It's about a young woman that lives in a failed hippie community with her maybe parents and some things that happened to her. It's kind of gritty, I think, or it was. I mean, I've read it, but it was really done, really well done, and it's really stuck in my mind, some of the things that happened. So I'm definitely going to give that a reread and be back to talk about that. Okay, two more. Yeah. This one, Lincoln in the Bardo, is quite well known, and I'm surprised it's not on our own National Book Award list, since it's about our President Lincoln, and but it is on the Mann Booker Prize list. It's a, you might say, experimental type novel, or very different. It's it does deal with Abraham Lincoln and the death of his son, and it starts out pretty traditionally in that the son is actually dying upstairs in the White House while the parents are forced to give this dinner party since he's president, and I think they don't realize he's dying at that point, but it's very well done, and you get a sense of what the parties were like back then. After that, it turns into the experimental, interesting part where Lincoln goes to the cemetery, I believe it's Rockville Cemetery, where his son is interned, and for his own meditations. And during this part, there are voices that come in and talk. Now, I read this completely, and though I did get it, I knew what the voices were. There were different voices about different subjects from different people, and I wasn't totally lost, but I know there's a lot more to be gained from it. So actually, what I'm doing with this is I'm also going to listen to the audio while reading it. I understand the audio is just tremendous work. They involve many different actors with the different voices, some of them famous actors, and I understand it's really a tour de force. So I'm looking forward to trying that approach to this. Okay, and lastly, we have Paul Auster's 4321. And it is really a tour de force, you might say. I've heard a lot of mainly somewhat negative comments in that people just can't finish this. It is 800 pages, but it's about, I tried reading it first and I got confused because it's about a boy who is born and then it splits into 4 parts and there's 4 of the same boy and each chapter is one of the 4 boys and what happens to him, and all the differences are only start out as little tiny differences that happen in his life that become bigger and bigger as he grows older. And I was getting quite confused which boy was which, though I really love the writing. So my new approach is to draw up a schedule, you might say, of 1, 2, 3, 4. And as I read that chapter on that particular part of that boy, I'll write what happened and what happened differently. So then when I get to the next chapter, I can quickly go back to see what happened to that one. And anyway, I'm sure that Paul Auster himself must have had a huge wall-sized paper to keep track of all these stories, and it's just masterfully done. Anyway, so I'm determined I'm going to finish that one. So, okay, my goodness, this is my longest video ever. Oh, actually, maybe good because I'm not going to be back to making a video for over a week. I'm going out of town. I still will be watching your videos and making my usual comments. So please comment on any of these that you might be reading or what you think might win. And I'll be back definitely in time to tell you what should win the Mann Booker Prize on October 17th. Okay, bye.